Hello, it's Kait Moon, and this is July. I have had a lot happening in the last few weeks, so I just wanted to take a couple minutes and update you. My grandfather passed away a couple months ago, which is why June was very slow. And of course, we've moved, me and my children, to Groningen. So also what happened, which was a bit sad, not a bit sad, very sad, is that David Palladini also passed away. And David Palladini is an immense inspiration to me as an artist. His illustrations graced many children's book covers and all kinds of things. There's tarot cards and big, thick books of his work, and he's been on display all around the world. And his stuff is just absolutely beautiful and in ways I've never seen any other artist work. So I'm going to be sharing some of his work with you today. So in honor of all of the beautiful men who have passed recently, and women as well, all people who are suffering loss of the physical forms of those they've loved, are loving, still loving, always loving, I'm going to read a story from this amazing book I keep looking at, The Girl Who Cried Flowers and Other Tales. So I'm going to get to it. For me, it's kind of a toss-up between The Girl Who Cried Flowers and The Weaver of Tomorrow, because those are my two favorites. So I decided on The Weaver of Tomorrow because it sort of fits, I think, the mood in a way. And I would say the illustrations for this particular story are not my favorite of his in this book, of David's. So I think what I'll do is I'll read this story because it's my favorite story, Jane's, and then I'll show you some of the illustrations of my favorite part of the book. This book is out of print. I think that's such a shame. That features in a story of the book with me and my father, which I may tell sometime. If anyone wants to hear that story, you let me know in comments and I'll write that story for you. But let's begin. The Weaver of Tomorrow by Jane Yolen, illustrated by David Palladini. Rest in peace, amazing artist. Once, on the far side of yesterday, there lived a girl who wanted to know the future. She was not satisfied with knowing that the grass would come up each spring and that the sun would go down each night. The true knowledge that she desired was each tick of tomorrow, each fall and each failure, each heartache and each pain that would be the portion of every man. And because of this wish of hers, she was known as Vera, which is to say, true. At first, it was easy enough. She lived simply in a simple town where little happened to change a day but a birth or a death that was always expected. And Vera awaited each event at the appointed bedside, and in this way was always the first to know. But, as with many wishes of the heart, hers grew from a wish to a desire, from a desire to an obsession. And soon, knowing the simple futures of the simple people in that simple town was not enough for her. I wish to know what tomorrow holds for everyone, said Vera, for every man and woman in our country, for every man and woman in our world. It is not good, this thing you wish, said her father. But Vera did not listen. Instead, she said, I wish to know which king will fall and what the battle, which queen will die and what the cause. I want to know how many mothers will cry for babies lost and how many wives will weep for husbands slain. And when she heard this, Vera's mother made the sign against the evil one, for it was said in their simple town that the future was the devil's dream. But Vera only laughed and said loudly, and for that I want to know what the evil one himself is doing with his tomorrow. Since the evil one himself could not have missed her speech, the people of the town visited the mayor and asked him to send Vera away. The mayor took Vera and her mother and father, and they sought out the old man who lived in the mountain who would answer one question a year, and they asked him what to do about Vera. The old man who lived in the mountain, who ate the seeds that flowers dropped and the berries that God wrought, and who knew all about yesterdays and cared little about tomorrow, said, she must be apprenticed to the weaver. A weaver, said the mayor and Vera's father and mother all at once. They thought surely that the man who lived in the mountain had gone mad. But the old man shook his head. Not a weaver, but the weaver of tomorrow. She weaves with a golden thread and finishes each piece with a needle so fine that each minute of the unfolding day is woven into her work. They say that once every 100 years there's a need for an apprentice, and it is just that many years since one has been found. This is the old man. As drawn by David. So beautiful. Where does one find this weaver? Asked the mayor. Ah, that I cannot say, said the old man who lived in the mountain, for I've answered one question already. And he went back into his cave and rolled a stone across the entrance, a stone small enough to let the animals in, but large enough to keep the townspeople out. Never mind, said Vera. I would be apprenticed to this weaver, and not even the devil himself can keep me from finding her. And so saying, she left the simple town with nothing but the clothes upon her back. She wandered until the hills got no higher than the valleys, but the valleys got deeper. She searched from one cold moon until the next, and at last, without warning, she came upon a cave where an old woman in black stood waiting. You took the devil's old time coming, said the old woman. It was not his time at all, declared Vera. Oh, but it was, said the old woman, and she led the girl into the cave. And what a wondrous place the cave was. On one wall hung skeins of yarn of rainbow colors. On the other walls were tapestries of delicate design. In the center of the cave, where a single shaft of sunlight fell, was the loom of polished ebony, higher than a man and 3 times as broad, with a shuttle that flew like a captive black bird through the golden threads of the warp. For a year and a day, Vera stayed in the cave, apprenticed to the weaver. She learned which threads wove the future of kings and princes, and of which peasants and slaves. She was first to know in which kingdoms the sun would set and which kingdoms would be gone before the sun rose again. And though she was not yet allowed to weave, she watched the black loom where each minute of the day took shape, and learned how, once it had been woven, no power could change its course, not an emperor, not a slave, not the weaver herself. And she was taught to finish the work with a golden thread and a needle so fine that no one could tell where one day ended and the next began. And for a year, she was happy. But finally the day dawned when Vera was to start her 2nd year with a weaver. It began as usual. Vera rose and set the fire. Then she removed the tapestry of yesterday from the loom and brushed it outside until the golden threads mirrored the morning sun. She hung it on a silver hook that was by the entrance to the cave. Finally, she returned to the loom, which waited mutely for the golden warp to be strung. And each thread that Vera pulled tight sang like the string of a harp. When she was through, Vera set the pot on the fire and woke the old woman to begin weaving. The old woman creaked and muttered as she stretched herself up. But Vera paid her no heed. Instead, she went to the wall of skeins and picked at random the colors to be woven, and each thread was a life. Slowly, slowly, the old weaver had cautioned when Vera first learned to choose the threads. At the end of each thread is the end of a heartbeat. The last of each color is the last of a world. But Vera could not learn to choose slowly, carefully. Instead, she plucked and picked like a gay bird in the seed. And so it was with me, said the old weaver with a sigh. And so it was at first with me. Now a year had passed, and the old woman kept her counsel for herself as Vera's fingers danced through the threads. Now that she went creaking and muttering to the loom and began to weave. And now Vera turned her back to the growing cloth that told the future and took the pot from the fire to make their meal. But as soon as that was done, she would hurry back to watch the growing work, for she never wearied of watching the minutes take shape on the ebony loom. Only this day, as her back was turned, the old woman uttered a cry, and it was like a sudden sharp pain, and the silence after it was like the release from pain altogether. Vera was so startled she dropped the pot, and it spilled over and sizzled the fire out. She ran to the old woman who sat staring at the growing work. There, in the gold and shimmering tapestry, the weaver had woven her own coming death. There was the cave, and there the dropped pot, and last the bed, where with the sun shining full on her face, the old woman would breathe no more. It has come, said the old woman to Vera, smoothing her black skirts over her knees. The loom is yours. She stood up, fresher and younger than Vera had ever seen her, and moved with a springy joy to the bed. Then she straightened the covers and lay down, her face turned toward the entrance of the cave. A shaft of light fell on her feet and began to move as the sun moved, slowly towards her head. No, cried Vera at the smiling woman. I want the loom, but not this way. Gently, with folded hands, the old weaver said, Dear child, there is no other way. Then, said Vera slowly, knowing she lied, but lying nonetheless, I do not want it. The time for choosing is past, said the old weaver. You choose, and your hands have been chosen. It is woven. It is so. And in 100 years? Asked Vera. You will be the weaver, and some young girl will come bright and eager, and you will know your time is near. No, said Vera. It is birth, said the weaver. No, said Vera. It is death, said the old weaver. A single golden thread snapped suddenly on the loom. Then the sun moved under the weaver's face, and she died. Vera sat staring at the old woman, but did not stir, and though she sat for hour upon hour, and the day grew cold, the sun did not go down. Battles raged on, but no one won, and no one lost, for nothing more had been woven. At last, shivering with the cold, though the sun was still high, Vera went to the loom. She saw the old woman buried, and herself at work, and so she hastened to the tasks. And when the old woman lay under an unmarked stone in a forest full of unmarked stones, with only Vera to weep her down, Vera returned to the cave. Inside, the loom gleamed black, like a giant ebony cage with golden bars as thin and fine as thread. And as Vera sat down to finish the weaving, her bones felt old, and she welcomed the shaft of sun as it crept across her back. She welcomed each trip of the shuttle through the warp as it ticked off the 100 years to come, and at last Vera knew all she wanted to know about the future. And that is my favorite story in the book, The Girl Who Cried Flowers and Other Tales, by Jane Yolen, and illustrated by David Palladini, who recently passed away. And this is in honor of him and his beautiful work. I want to show you last the pieces of the book that are my favorite of his work, and which I remembered as a young child. I was separated from this book for many years, and when I got it back, I realized, oh my gosh, I remember every single picture in this book. And these poppies are so beautiful and are my favorite part of this book. This is featured in the story of the title, which is The Girl Who Cried Flowers. This tree is just absolutely luscious. Sorry about the sounds. There's people driving by. So this book is sadly, like I said, out of print, but I'm sharing it a bit with you, all for free, because this isn't my work, first of all, but also because everybody should know about this beautiful story. Thank you so much for watching today and for all you do to help me keep arting, creating, sharing. If you have a suggestion of a book to be read by me, I would love to read books to you. Great day.